So what the hell happened with F91? With the film that was set up to change the entire course of history within the Universal Century, as well as setting up a whole new fresh start for the franchise, it came out to be a huge mess. While this movie has had some of the Universal Century's highest of highs, it also had some of the lowest of lows. And today, I'm going to discuss the problems with F91 as a film, while also discussing what happened during the production of the film. I've already made a video on my channel before about this movie, but I don't want to spend too much time reviewing this film again, so I'll try to keep my thoughts very brief. F91 was a very ambitious film that tried to do so much with its runtime, but because of that, it failed. As a new entry point of the Universal Century, it had to find a way to do numerous things a TV series takes numerous episodes to do, but about an hour and a half of runtime. This doesn't suggest that the movie failed from the very beginning as a concept. I think it probably has one of the strongest openings in the entire franchise, to be honest. Within the first 5 minutes of the film, there is so much chaos that ensues and is honestly the best scene of the movie. It might also be the best colony invasion scene that the franchise has to offer. The only difference is that in F91, they quite literally invaded the colony. There's so much more chaos, bloodshed, and collateral damage. Comparing this to the original series though, it has the main character get into a Gundam in order to defend himself in the colony. Whereas in F91, most of the characters are already running away, which adds a lot more tension to the scene, as they have no means in which to defend themselves. Even though when they try to defend themselves by using old mobile suits and tanks, they just have no chance whatsoever in stopping the invasion. And it's in this scene that I believe that Gundam Hathaway took inspiration from, since Tomino kind of wrote both of these. But to be fair, Tomino's novels were written in 1989, 2 years before this film was created, so maybe this film took inspiration from the novels. And speaking of that scene, let me know if you want to make a video about that invasion scene from Gundam Hathaway, because it's really incredible. And if you want to see more Gundam content like this, feel free to like and subscribe, because that lets me know that people want to see more of the stuff I do. Back to F91, it succeeded in hooking the viewer in with so much chaos and insanity, and at the same time brings many characters together so quickly and turns them towards the enemy they eventually have to face in the end. The invasion of the colony that the main characters live in, which was done by the hands of the Crossbone Vanguard, like I said, was fantastically done. And it doesn't shy away from being visually incredible, and at points even has some of the darkest scenes in the entire franchise. And this chaos actually kind of benefits in the story by having some of the main characters already brought together and somewhat introduced. But at the same time, it can feel kind of contrived, and some might even argue that some of the deaths from early on could be there for just shock value alone. I mean, come on, why would some of these scenes even be here for? There are like two main characters that people could actually remember, which are Cecily and Seabook. Which is kind of unfortunate, because after doing so much work through getting all these characters together at the beginning, you can't really find that much reason to care for most of them, since throughout the film, you don't really get that much screen time with them, as the film tries to focus more on the plotline of Seabook trying to save Cecily from the Crossbone Vanguard. There's a lot of positives from this film too. The action is incredible, as well as the animation. There's so many new mobile suit designs like the F91, and a bunch of other grunt suits, but that's kind of where my positives end. The film feels very confused at times and is very rushed. It took me 2 back-to-back watches to understand what I actually just watched, because at the end of the film there's a huge battle, a bunch of stuff happens and the villain dies, and everyone's happy in the end, unlike the fans, because they were baited by that infamous line, "This is only the beginning." And to this day, many of us are still coping to that line, hoping for a Crossbone Gundam anime to be announced. So many people already know that this film was doomed from the very beginning, as it wasn't really the director Yoshiyuki Tomino's fault for how it turned out. This film has probably had the strongest half the franchise at that point has had ever since the beginning, with the director Yoshiyuki Tomino, the character designer Yoshikazu Yashihiko, and mech designer Kunio Okawara. All of those people who worked on the original series finally returning after 20 years later. And F91 originally wasn't supposed to be a movie, but instead a TV series. And this marks the 3rd time that I can recall where Tomino was screwed over by Sunrise and the production committee. Tomino had a plan to make a new series where he spends a ton of episodes pretty much establishing the main characters as well as a Crossbone Vanguard a lot more naturally, but instead they denied his request and just wanted him to make a movie instead. And if you watched the movie, you could tell. It wasn't intended to be a movie. I compare this movie to Char's Counterattack sometimes, even though I really like that film. Both films have very rushed plots, numerous bland and underdeveloped characters, but excelled in terms of animation and mech designs. One thing I really didn't think F91 is on par with is the ending, because Char's Counterattack's ending is like incredible, even though it doesn't make that much sense to people upon first watching. Like for real, I watched the movie in theaters with my brother, and a week after I asked him, hey, so did Amuro and Char die in the end of the movie? Or was it a very ambiguous ending where the ending is never revealed? And he looked at me with so much confusion and said, "You didn't know that they died?" Like, that was insane. Nothing topped that for me back then. I also like to use F91 as an example of, there's no way you can cram multiple episodes of content into a movie no matter how much you try. Like, Berserk failed at that. If you saw my video about Zeta Gundam's A New Translation, to me, that failed. I've yet to see any movie that does this. So while editing, I remember that Encounters in Space exist. Going back to the production of this film, it not only felt like the story was rushed, but it turns out the production overall was very rushed. I've been looking at my Twitter and I found that there's a release of a theatrical cut of the movie that someone had on VHS. And there were a ton of scenes that were reanimated for what we have on home releases, or what you're watching right now. So unsurprisingly, the animation quality kind of suffered back then in theaters. But not only was the animation rushed, but it seems like the soundtrack was too. Or maybe it wasn't, and the composer was a huge fan of Star Wars. Not like it sounds like Star Wars in terms of instruments or anything. No. One track literally sounds like the Imperial March. And if I play it right now and get a claim saying it's the Imperial March, I'm actually gonna lose it. So realistically, what would have happened if Tomino's vision for a new generation of Gundam was actually fulfilled? Well, for me to understand his vision, I'd have to read a manga series that he was the author of called Crossbone Gundam. It's a series that I was told was very good in almost every way. From its characters, artwork, plot, and mechs, it seemed like something the fans truly care about. And with Gundam Hathaway finally being adapted, which let me tell you is the one piece of Gundam that Tomino thought could never be adapted. And here we are in 2022 with the second film already almost coming out in a year or two. So that gives me a lot of hope for Crossbone Gundam to eventually get the adaptation it truly deserves. And like the new Wish from Mercury series, which will eventually hopefully bring in a new generation of fans who want to explore the franchise and all the wonders that Gundam brings. As for Crossbone Gundam, I hear it does a lot more of the material in F91, as it eventually has Cecily lead the Crossbone Vanguard as another foe or enemy appears. Which does sound a lot more interesting since F91 was very inconsistent when it came to a lot of things, like developing its characters. I'm not saying F91 doesn't at least try to do this, they do try, and it doesn't work at all for a number of reasons. There's a very important thing that most Gundam pilots face sometimes when they face the realization that they kill someone for the first time. And it's something that most series do very well. You know, let's talk about one of the most popular ones, like Unicorn. It does it a little bit well. And it usually takes some time for the pilot, in Unicorn's case, Banazir, a while for him to realize this, and in the future, find ways to overcome this feeling, or finding ways to avoid killing entirely. And that's kind of what he wants to do for the rest of the series, avoiding pointless casualties. So when Seba kills 2 people with his Gundam at once, he has the appropriate reaction to this. And then the scene changes, just like that. And he's just in a random street looking for Cecily. I shit you not, this is the unedited footage. So yeah, this is one of the many examples that F91 kind of fumbled in presenting a new and bold take on the Universal Century. It definitely did shine in a lot of places like the colony invasion, its character designs, and animation. But unfortunately, it's one of the many examples of Yoshiyuki Tomino getting absolutely screwed over by production committees and Sunrise, from straight up cancelling his shows to now changing his series format entirely to movie formats, essentially forcing him to do so much in so little time. In the near future, hopefully his vision in Crossbone Gundam gets adapted to get the treatment it so rightfully deserves, hopefully on par with the treatment Hathaway's Flash is getting, which during its release in the 80s was considered by Tomino unadaptable. So maybe there is hope. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. The next video has been cycling between a production of Mobile Suit Gundam and a Build Fighters video. So I appreciate the engagement with the polls. I might do some more in the future, so if you're new and want to be part of that, feel free to subscribe and turn on the bell notifications. And if you want more updates, feel free to follow my Twitter at CheemsBased. Thank you guys again for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.